This is the Pure Fury Creations Entertainment Network.
I'm Jason Klaus. And over the course of my life, I've done a lot of different things, and I've worn a lot of different hats. But this may be my greatest endeavor yet. On this show, we are going to focus on life. We are going to focus on the basic fundamentals. We are going to focus on the silver lining. Because no matter what happens, no matter what is thrown our way, there is a silver lining. There is a lesson to be learned. Sometimes we just have to look a little bit harder, a little bit deeper for it. That's what this show is all about. Sometimes it's going to be rough, sometimes it's going to be raw, sometimes it may be hard to listen to. But it's something that you need to hear. This just got real.
And now, the Pure Fury Creations Entertainment Network presents its flagship show, the Klaus to the Heart podcast. Here is your host, Jason Klaus.
And we welcome you to the Klaus to the Heart podcast, the flagship show of the PFC Entertainment Network. I'm Jason Klaus. Certainly appreciate you tuning in here this week. And this is something of a redo recording. Truth be told, I mean, the majority of you, most of you are going to be hearing this and seeing this across our platforms. Whether it be, audio through iTunes and Spotify, iHeartRadio, or through the YouTube channel, in which case the video will be made available. It will go on Spotify as well. But this is something of a redo episode because last week I was on location when I recorded the Ask Me Anything episode. And then I went back and went to listen to it. When it dropped on the RSS feed, like the first however long, there was no sound. My voice was completely muted. And then when it did come back on, it's a bad headset is what it boils down to. And like I couldn't get past like 10 minutes of listening to all that shit going on. And then I just wasn't real happy with my whole approach with that episode. And a couple of the answers that I had given were because I knew about them, but I didn't want to put a tremendous amount of thought and I didn't want to overthink it. You know what I mean? And specifically with the first question that got asked, like, if I could sit down with one famous person, non-wrestling related, past, present, or even future, to interview for 1 hour, who would that be and why? And what questions would I ask? And I honestly don't know. Like at the time, I had said Dave Matthews, but that was because, I'm a big fan of that guy, and I was about ready to go see him in concert. So clearly, from a fan standpoint, from a creative standpoint, I would love to sit down and pick that dude's brain. But I hate saying it like this, but I just don't know if there is one person that I would seek out to sit down and interview. And I'm not really sure why that is. You would think that there are people that pop up. Because anybody, like I have always been fascinated with John Kennedy, President Kennedy. Um, but what do you ask the dude that has already been asked 1,000 times or had been? Um, now, if if we want to sit down post assassination, if there was a way to make that happen, I mean, then obviously that opens up a whole different can of worms in terms of a sit down. But when you talk about the future, who knows what the hell is going to be available to us by that point? I feel like we're slowly but surely making our way to the era of the Jetsons. So I say that to say there are. I'm almost glad that it happened this way because I'm back in my home studio with my good equipment. It's a more controlled environment. I'm not outdoors, and there's an opportunity to get my answers across in a more direct way. So the recording that happened last week has been pulled down across all platforms, and so we're going to redo this. Actually, as I'm doing this right now, it is being live streamed, just only exclusively on Riverside.fm. So if you haven't done so already, you may want to consider hitting the subscribe button on our channel here on Riverside.fm. So something of a live stream happening, but not across the bigger platforms of like Facebook and Twitter. So I just went ahead and answered that first question. Levi Blue had sent in, a few questions here. If you had a time machine and could successfully stop one world event from happening, what would that be and why? And I had said initially, the first one that comes to mind was 9/11. But when you look over the course of our history, world history, our country's history, there is so many monumental and catastrophic events that make a very strong argument of being that one world event that could be stopped and altered or changed, and how would that change the ripple effect. I remain steadfast in my answer after putting more thought into it, but you talk about, when you're talking about world events and you're looking at the history of the world, what do you pinpoint it on? Do you pinpoint it on things like the Black Plague? Um, do you put it under the umbrella of something like the bombings in Japan, um, World War One, World War Two, Pearl Harbor, the Civil War? I mean, how far back do you go? What one world event, if it hadn't happened, wouldn't have triggered subsequent events of that nature? Some in which, they happen so often they barely get a mention now, unless it's something completely over the top. Um, you take weather into consideration. Jesus, if you've been paying attention to what's been going on with the flooding in Texas, that is absolutely awful. Then you look at all the hurricanes, and here in the state of Michigan, there is a generation of people that still talk about the Beecher tornado. Um, so, natural disaster events, those those have to be taken into consideration, right? But I still go back to Columbine. I still go back to Columbine just because take nothing away from the pure evil that was on display. And I don't give a rat's ass what triggered it. That is its own issue, and yes, does need to be discussed and explored. But at the same time, justifying in your head that it's okay to get in possession of a shit ton of weapons and go into your school and just start mowing people down. That is an evil that we had not seen in that manner. I had mentioned I had just seen a documentary on one of the streaming apps, Tubi or Pluto TV, or one of the lower tier ones. And they interviewed 4 students from Columbine, 2 of which had been shot, and the other 2 were in a room watching their classmates get executed, more or less. That display offered other soldiers of evil to see a new way to make the wrong kind of history, and at the expense of innocent kids. More, and it hits different when you are in a community or you are in the proximity of a community that deals with something like that on that level. You know, we're still talking about and feeling the ramifications of a similar situation in Oxford, Michigan. You know, I feel like if Columbine hadn't happened, um, a lot of kids' lives would be saved, spared, whatever you want to call it. That one hit different. That one hit real different when it happened. All right. This next one that Levi sent was another good one. You can have any job you want. Whatever job you choose, you would automatically have the knowledge to do said job. What would that job be and why? I I have maintained, and I will continue to maintain. Um, Before I put all of my efforts and energies into getting involved in the wrestling business, the professional wrestling business, I really wanted to be a teacher, a school teacher. And you know, when your kids, sometimes, especially like on a rainy day, when there's like a neighborhood of kids and there's not much to do outside, so you got to figure out something to do on the inside. A lot of times you will play school. One kid's the teacher, the rest of the kids are the students, and you go through and you make your little worksheets and you come up with your little lesson plans. I mean, we did, and I didn't think much of it as a career thought up until I got into the 6th grade. And I had John Niblack as my teacher. And his approach was different than anything that I had experienced as a student, because all my teachers from kindergarten through 5th grade were all women. His wife actually was the principal at Hadley Elementary. And when the way our district was set up, you went to Hadley from kindergarten through 5th. Then you went to Murphy Elementary in Metamora. So we had to do that, and I had John Niblack as my teacher. And he just, he made teaching fun. He made learning fun. And I was not the best student. But he knew how, I really admired how he was able to shift his approach with every student in his class just based on what they needed. Like, I picked up on that very early on. And I'm like, wow, this is a pretty cool dude, In the years after that, going into junior high school and high school, there were other teachers that I had that really made an impression and really encouraged me to explore different realms of my creativity. Writing was one of them, from a very early age. But I wanted to make a difference. I wanted to be somebody that somebody could look back on and be like, I am where I am because that guy believed in me, or that guy taught me this, or you know what I mean? Something along those lines. I'm a better person because of something I learned from that guy. Then I found out how grossly underpaid teachers are. And it's like, what? You're literally helping shape and form and mold the future's mindset, with knowledge, with experience, and you got teachers that are barely able to make ends meet. Like, what? I don't want to go down that rabbit hole, but teachers are grossly underpaid is all I'm going to say. Jeff Hosky asked a few questions too. Jeff also worked with me in the MWO for a long, long time. One of my most loyal guys, if I can be honest. We poke fun at him, poking and prodding and a little bit of ribbing here and there, but he's, at the end of the day, he's a good dude. He's got a good heart. I like him. Not very much, but I like him. He'll appreciate that. Jeff asked, one wish that could grant anything, what would it be and why? Now, I tried to play the diplomatic approach with this, and while I was serious when I said, I just want people to stop being shitty to one another just for the sake of being shitty. I would like to see a society that overwhelmingly respects one another. You don't have to like them necessarily, but you don't have to go out of your way to be a complete and total douchebag either. a little bit more patience, a little bit more understanding. So I realize that's a lot to ask for in this day and age. But more selfishly, if I'm being honest, if a genie come out of a lamp, it was going to grant me one wish. And assuming we're going by Aladdin rules here, like you can't bring anybody back from the beyond or what have you, my wish would be, from a selfish approach, to get this network profitable so myself and my co-hosts don't have to worry about going to a job that they don't really want to do. That would be my one wish. To get this network in a place where you can make a living at it. Not only is that my wish, that's my goal. That's what efforts are made towards now. Wise words for this generation. And my answer will remain the same with this as well. This generation needs to slow the fuck down and get back to the basic fundamentals of life. Because I'm here to tell you, it does not revolve around these goddamn things. Smartphones, things of this nature. People get, it's frightening, it's nauseating, it's embarrassing to see people of all ages so consumed with this piece of shit. People become obsessed with it. People become like it's. And look, make no mistake, I use mine every day. But generally, I'm using it for things like I need to look something up, or like I'm playing music out of it, like things of that nature. But I ain't going to be sitting here while a song's playing with my face buried in the fucking screen reading the lyrics. Just so my eyeballs are fixated on this screen. Fuckers, you really need to calm down. Really need to calm down. Because the more obsessive you become more with these things, the more detached you become from the human race. And you're starting to get to a point where you don't know how to communicate properly. And it's fucking embarrassing, if I can be honest. Put this shit down for a block of time every single day and go do something. Go outside. Go for a walk. Get off of social media. It ain't that deep, man. The only exception is if somehow or another that's how you make your living. But I mean, even there's boundaries, you know. It's it's these types of things, smartphones and video game systems that allow you to communicate with people literally around the world in real time. It's something else. It's a blessing and a curse. Smartass also asks, why do you love AEW? I don't love AEW. I don't hate AEW either. Like, that is general consensus. I absolutely hate the promotion. I don't hate the promotion. I don't have, and I know this is going to sound really assholish for the lack of a better term, but I don't have it in me to give that kind of energy to that promotion in order for me to hate it. Just isn't that deep. I recognize it for what it is. It is a product that is primarily written for and geared towards a very small niche market of a broader fan base for a specific genre of entertainment. That's what AEW is. You have a guy running the show that is a huge fan, and his booking practices look as if he is setting up cards with his little action figures, but actually using real humans. That's how it feels. They're more worried about getting their 15 seconds of holy shit moments over moments that fans will remember for the rest of their lives. I've tried with AEW. I really tried. But the fact of the matter is, what they're 5-6 years into this thing now, there has not been one time that I've been able to sit through an entire broadcast from start to finish of an AEW show. I am not the demo, clearly. No, and I'm not sitting here saying that WWE does everything right, because they do not. But overall, that is my preferred brand of sports entertainment. But I'm still paying attention to NWA and Evolve. They're going to be on like the Roku channel and Tubi and all the these lower tiered streaming apps. I'm still reading news sites and stuff like that. So I'm paying attention to everything, but my level of investment is just not on the AEW side of things. I just don't fundamentally agree with the way things are done over there. Again, like I respect every man and woman that puts their lives on the line and steps in the ring and does what they can do. Number one, fulfill the job for which they're paid, and two, to make a name for themselves in an increasingly saturated environment. I don't know. It just isn't my thing, man. I don't hate it. And then his last question is, why is your most hated wrestler Levi Blue? And I said initially, and I'll say it again, it's not Levi Blue. It's Levo Adonis. Oh, all right. The other questions that had been sent in, I'll run through these a little bit. I heard that there was an MWO reunion show coming. Is that true? And why did it take you so long? That came to us from Ryan Jackson. Well, it appears that he may have gotten wind of an event that does have the word reunion attached to it, whether he saw something online from an alumni or whatever. I am doing okay. Let me put it like this. Number one, we are not doing an MWO reunion show. there is no MWO reunion show. Like, I sold all my equipment to make sure there would not be an MWO reunion show. Okay. What I am doing is I am hosting a private alumni reunion picnic. That's what I'm doing. As much as I would love to be able to do something on a bigger scale that we could invite fans into and things of that nature, that would be a lot. you know. Um, but this is something that I've been wanting to do for a couple of years now, and there was a sense of urgency that got kicked into play here with the recent passing of Todd Gilbert. When I went to his funeral, I saw a lot of former MWO personalities, superstars, that I hadn't seen in a couple of years. And I hated that we were all there for that reason. So this is, I'm like, this is something I've got to do, and I got to kind of do it right now. So while there is no live public event, we are doing a private gathering. So hopefully that clears some of that up. John Crenshaw had asked, what are you most proud of looking back on your time running the MWO? I don't know if I can go back and do the whole spiel because it was a very organic answer and it came from the heart in real time. But, just seeing these guys and gals explore their dreams and go through the trials and tribulations that come with that. Watching these people bust out of their shell, like you knew, deep down inside, like they had a legitimate passion and desire to be involved in the wrestling business. It took some longer than others to feel comfortable in that environment. And when you see that start to unfold, I had often used the analogy of, like the egg in the nest. You start to see, the kid, for the lack of better terms, start to break out of their shell. It starts with these cracks. And then all of a sudden, the thing, it comes open and they put themselves out there and then they develop into the star that they knew that they were going to. Like, man, given my role as promoter or owner of the organization, to see that is very much like a father type of pride, because you knew they had it in them. And in some cases, man, like I went to bat for a couple people, and I knew it would take them longer to come into their own, but I also knew that they had it in them, and I wasn't going to give up on them. I just had to be strategic with how they were utilized. It caused bouts of friction with my brother and Levi Blue and, other people on the roster. Like, what are you doing? Let this dude go. I'm like, I can't. There's something in there. And I'm just waiting to find out what it's going to take to accelerate his growth into a star. And man, when it happens, like I'm not one that does the whole "I told you so" thing. I don't need to do that. But I do take an awful lot of personal pride. Like, I'm like, damn right, finally. Now I don't look like such an asshole. What's one topic you won't talk about on the show? I've mentioned this several times. Politics and religion. Just not going to do it. Just not going to do it. It's too controversial. It's too polarizing. It's one of those things like there are people just chomping at the bit to get into an argument with somebody just for the sake of argument. It gets way too exhausting. I believe in what I believe. I vote how I vote, based on what I think is going to be best for me or my family. I don't need to discuss that with anybody. I don't need to have it validated by anybody. I don't need to have it justified. I think it's none of anybody's business. As long as I don't try to shove my thoughts, opinions, agendas down anybody else's throat, it shouldn't mean a fuck all. There's other platforms. There's way more other shows to have those kind of conversations. This ain't going to be one of them. Not unless something extraordinary happens. And I mean extraordinary. And finally, and this is what kind of positioned itself in as a segue into some announcements for the future of the network. Tina Smith asked, will there be new podcasts on the network, and what happened to the shows that were on there? This is the question that I really wanted to re-answer, because I knew what my intent was initially. It just did not come out the way I wanted it to. Not needed it, wanted it. The fact of the matter is, there are specific goals in line for this network. Short term, long term. Because nothing I ever do doesn't have some sort of goal attached to it. Otherwise, what's the point of doing it? I started what became eventually the Pure Fury Creations Entertainment Network about 5.5 years ago. Not knowing exactly what I wanted. I had an idea, but I wasn't exactly sure, because at that time I was struggling to find foundation to stand on for anything. Life as I had known it was completely shifted and altered and destroyed in some cases, and I was left there to pick up the pieces, trying to figure out what the fuck. I built the first block of what would become the foundation of this network, because it gave me, selfishly, my avenue of release, my avenue of escape. It allowed me to have a voice, and allowed me to explore a realm of entertainment that I had a great deal of interest in. And the most appealing part of it was I could be entertaining and not beat the shit out of my body for it. And as my goals and my dreams really started to take shape and develop, and like I had an end game in place, I would think about content. Who's funny? Who's entertaining? Who's intelligent? Who has something unique to offer the growing and saturated world of audio entertainment? Over 5.5 years, there have been a variety of shows, men and women, who have taken time out of their lives to try to build a show. For one reason or another, some shows remain, some co-hosts remain, other ones did not. While decisions were made one way or the other, I will always be very appreciative of the alumni, we'll call them, who took the time to help build a piece of the foundation that this network currently stands on. I will always be greatly appreciative of that. In a more individual space and sometimes personally charged, although I know I have always been one that can put personal feelings aside in the best interest of business when it calls for it. But I'm also not going to sit here and disqualify me for other people's feelings or wants, or because there are people that quit recording with a network because they didn't feel like they had they felt like they deserved more access to my personal side of things than I was willing to allow. Like they were buttoned up to the boundaries and I wasn't budging. And that caused friction. It caused hurt feelings. And I can understand that. And I absolutely hate that. But, it's just one of those things. Other shows and hosts dip their toe in the water here, and they either didn't want to continue, or they actually developed a confidence, an identity, and are going to take what they've learned here and try their hand on their own platform, which I think is absolutely amazing. And I wish them nothing but the best. There are no hard feelings, and there are no ill feelings, hard feelings. I don't hold a grudge. It is what it is. I think the only exception to the rule I take is when, there's been a few instances where, you feel like you are building not just a collaboration on a public and in a professional environment in terms of podcasting, but, you start to develop friendships. And when you find out that those said quote unquote friends, really take you to task behind your back, that starts to violate a little thing I like to call trust. And if I can't trust you, I can't be around you in any capacity whatsoever. You are more than held at arm's length, and I will be goddamned if I invite that kind of toxicity and question marks into a network, into an endeavor that is my escape from that kind of bullshit. Feel me? Five and a half years has been spent trying to figure out the best course of action here. For me, for the other co-hosts, and just as importantly, if not more so, you, the audience. So we're going to be doing some changes around here at the PFC Entertainment Network. Fatal 4-Way, which is distributed primarily through Orion Neighborhood Television, will continue its working relationship between PFC Network and ONTV. We will continue to be producing and presenting bi-weekly episodes of that program, which, that's one thing I really look forward to because it's something different. It's a different approach for me in preparation for it. The way it's presented, the way it's hosted, the way it's just an all-around different vibe. But it is under the PFC Network umbrella. That remains the same, primarily. Creepy Soup, which you hear on Sundays. Creepy Soup is recorded on its own. Jill and Judy record that show on their own. Jill sends me the file once it's recorded, and I put the bells and whistles, and we were actually the network is actually the one producing it and distributing it. That show will remain intact as it is. Right now they are on a weekly schedule. So essentially, their show will be available as they record it. And they do strive for a weekly drop. Although, life happens and it doesn't always materialize that way. Potato Pals Perspective with Pope Brandon Brownson and myself will be making a return on a bi-weekly basis. Offsetting those weeks will be episodes of Tea Time with Jim Burgett. The Sports Reel podcast has really started to become its own entity. And the consistency of that show is what is helping further a slow but sure growth in impressions, in interaction, and interest in the show. And I'm going to start tweaking it a little bit, not much. But I'm starting to see what is starting to flow better and what's being better received. And to be honest with you, like that is a block of time where the only concern I have is how Riverside is producing our shit in real time. That's the only thing I'm worried about, because it's Tim and I and sometimes Jim sitting down and talking about sports for about an hour. It's too easy. And I have so much respect for Tim and Jim, and their knowledge and their fanfare and their passion for sports. It's too easy. And the live streams seem to do well. What the 80s is going to remain a weekly show. But I'm completely changing the format on that one. It's going to be something totally, our approach will be totally different than what we did on What the 80s as it stands right now, and with the predecessor to that, which was Power Tripping through the 80s. My whole approach on that show is going to change starting next week. I'm even contemplating a complete overhaul in terms of name change, logo change, like everything. I'm not quite there yet. I haven't decided on that part of it yet, but starting next week, the entire format is going to change. That's going to be a little bit different than what every other 80s podcast is doing. And then, of course, there's the flagship show here. This will remain a weekly show. Now, longtime listeners, fans of this network overall, a red flag just popped up. And you're saying to yourself, the dude forgot one. And that one would be the real podcast with Amy Sheridan. So I can effectively say, or definitively say, that the real podcast moving forward will not be part of our regular scheduled rotation. And the reason why that is because Amy Sheridan is going to be joining me on the flagship show here on Close to the Heart. Anybody who's listened to her show knows what kind of piss and vinegar she can be, what kind of fire she can bring to the dance, the dynamic between her and I when we have conversations. This offers a little bit more wiggle room in terms of availability and scheduling, which has always been a reoccurring thing, especially with this show. And that's why, we haven't heard from Nikki Falsoni in quite some time. Between her schedule and my schedule and the way that it is, it's been a lot, and trying to get Amy's show recorded and then still doing this, like, we're going to merge the two. So she will be joining me very, very soon here on the flagship show, and I am very excited about that. I'm very excited about the dynamic and the overall aura that she's going to bring to the show. And, she's going to have shit that she's going to want to talk about. I'm going to have shit that I'm going to want to talk about. So it's going to be a good time, and I'm looking forward to it. And I think she is too. So it's going to be cool. So stay tuned. We'll put out a graphic to advertise the, either the live recording or the drop of the first episode that she will be a part of this. So looking forward to that. With that, we're going to go ahead and start winding this down. We certainly appreciate everybody who tuned in to listen to this show. And if you haven't done so already, go through our plethora of pages over on Facebook, the PFC Entertainment Network, the Clouds to the Heart, Tea Time, the Sports Reel Podcast, Creepy Soup, Pro Wrestling Rewind, and the Fatal 4-Way. If you haven't done so, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, get notified when we go live, and stay up to date with all the latest news and information on all of our great shows here. And check out the PFC online store, pfcstore.printify.me, or our exclusive summer lineup, pfcsummer.printify.me. And now that we're in July, guess what's being done now? Preparation for the fall drop, our fall merchandise, which I can't believe, man. It just seems like it was the other day I just released the fall lineup, and now here we are looking at it again. So check out all the great merchandise of all those shows over at pfcstore.printify.me and our website, pfcnetwork.net. With that, go out this week, be awesome to yourselves and to each other. We'll see you next time right here on the Close to the Heart Podcast, the flagship show of the PFC Entertainment Network.